small piece of a big pie. Problem is much bigger than what has been raised here. But in my opinion, to give this harmonization of strategies, policies of different industries, and even within the same industry is crucial. To give an example, a natural resource management person would like to conserve and phase out as much land as possible. And on the other hand, a person from the crop department would like to expand the farmland, the arable land, as much as possible. If we do not have this strategy is harmonized, I think it's going to be difficult to achieve landscape restoration. It's also important to make a legislative review. What we have as legal tools, what is lacking, and to what extent existing legislative frameworks are actually going hand in hand. That is very important in my opinion. Maybe in line with this one, land use policy as a country is very important. Just as you drive from Addis to Shoftu or Mojo, you can all the fertile arable land has gone to industry, and people would normally go into seeking for alternative options, degrading lands, probably land that is not very suitable for different farming activities. And also in line with this one, I would like to stress land use rights. If farmers or any person do not have a meaningful land use right, probably as an individual, they do not care to maintain or to protect the land. And I would like to finish my comments with the need to increase awareness in the community, let alone the grassroots communities. Those who are working in land industries may not completely know what the country has as legal. About a year ago, FAO did an assessment regarding livestock policies and associated legal goods that are available and to what extent those operate at district level actually know them. And to our surprise, about 80% of experts, veterinarians, animal health assistants, they do not know what type of law the country has with respect to animal health. The same applies, in my opinion, to other sectors. And maybe the final one I would like to raise is the need to work on why do we create our natural ecosystem, our means of survival. My friend raised a good analogy this morning regarding garden and what is happening today. Why do we integrate? Why don't we protect our natural resources? Working on behavior change of mind.
Okay, thank you very much. So the speaker number 5 will go to that, but we don't have to repeat what has been raised before. We do have one solid hour, then we have to go through about 5 or some 6 questions we are remaining. Therefore, I'm going to limit even the number of speakers, the coming questions maybe. So the fifth speaker will continue.
My name is Consultation. So my comments maybe or come from a lawyer's background. So I think that this question, I would prefer to see this question really separated into different elements because it has the elements of policy implementation, law enforcement, like the first speaker assumes that there is a really comprehensive and up-to-date law. We have to assume that there exists, a satisfactory regulation or law to talk about enforcement. So it would have been better if we put it, into simpler, but more questions. But in the interest of time, it would be it's still. So I'll start with the stakeholder. I think a good, refined, extensive stakeholder mapping would help creativity, strengths in policy implementation, as well as coming up with relevant legislations, not just law enforcement, but in the first place we need to have extensive comprehensive emissions flows to address this whole issue of environmental climate change. So a comprehensive stakeholder mapping would be relevant, is my personal opinion. The other one is ownership. It has to do with, I think it relates with awareness raising. So in my belief, I don't think there is sufficient ownership of this environmental issue in this country. As Ethiopia is one of the, as an African country that's really dealing with poverty being one major issue in an African country. Talking about the environment, sustainability, may come as a luxury. If you ask the farmer, for example, the answer would be like myself and most of the state for generations. So the community members want to own this. And I think to address this really well thought out awareness program is important. Thirdly, identifying as a lawyer, I believe that it's very important to identify relevant proclamations, regulations that deal with the environment. This will enable stakeholders to understand how to push, how to advocate, how to go for existing enforcements, and how to have new regulations, as well as understand gaps and inconsistencies between different proclamations.
Thank you very much. Also, participants for introducing yourself. That's good for us. The last speaker. Yeah, as a back. Yeah, thank you.
I'm Masai from Africa. I'm going to give the will highlight establishment of landscape by different institutions, organizations, platforms. But bringing those platforms as well is very important to effectively coordinate, the national effort then by the different institutions and support the government effort in implementation of strategy and see as a purpose as well and share experience, knowledge, and best practices, devise some kind of inputs for decision makers with capacity in the sector. So we have established a kind of national platform that is stated as a public-private partnership for sustainable environment restoration platform with the leadership of EFCCC.
So in a breakout room, it says. Okay. Yes. Then from one, let's say.
To have a bit more. And sometimes it's also very important to have dialogue schemes that allow protocol firewalls in case of an event to see how systematically how things are carried out from the outside onto the finish line. If you're able to do that, that can be duplicated in different regions as well. Then you review which you want to issues across the country.
Okay, thank you very much. I think. Yeah, we shall move to the second. It's read from the screen. So the question is how to scale up our best practices regarding this sustainable land or the forest restoration and management aspect. There are certain good practices that you have been carrying out in Ethiopia, and the question is how to scale up that best one.
Also, feel free if you want to reshape this question, really. I mean, if you see it not a good one to capture your idea, then feel free to shape it so that it will capture a lot of things. We can also mix, put together question number 2 and the number 3. I just wanted one to be at national level and the other at global level, because you heard this morning that Ethiopia has divided its NDC into conditional and unconditional, and that is why I also put these things separate.
Okay, you mean that it's possible to respond the second and the third question together, that's as a national and at a global level, the best experiences or practices that we have. I think clear. Yes.
Question based on that. This question presupposes that at regional or local level you have the best practices existing. And you want those.
Yes.
That's what we mean. Right?
Yes. Yes.
What is that the practice right now?
Yes.
So we have good regional or local level best practices.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So 1, 2 speakers. So you'll consider question number 2 and 3 together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I think at the national level is a clear understanding of the issue of this practice concerned. It's violence conservation from that level. We are an important issue on base practice. That's one of the questions we need to answer. The second one is the major bottleneck in this country is documentation and continuation of what has been done during the various regimes. We take the countries during the regime or the third regime or the current regime. There are a couple of good practices at various levels, but we have some sort of proper documentation, tradition, or setup. Like, for example, registry. Every practices given at national and regional level should be registered in that registry and properly distributed for various stakeholders. So for me, some of the best practices, this precondition should be in place so that we can scale up. So in a nutshell, we need to agree what this practice means, then we need to have systemic way of practices and dissemination for the users. And this also should include what the private sector has done, what the communities have done, the traditional practice, for example, that conservation of perspective is also very much valued. There is farmers own very many practices in this country. Is that properly documented? We know that, and what are some of the additional arrangements that we need to upscale that? And this needs that I started saying for sectoral cooperation. The various sectors, the story culture, industry, transport, and the like. This will be coordinated so that we work on one we should go. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Number 2, speaker.
Yeah.
Okay. Before getting to second question, I would like to give some comment on the first question. By looking at the first question, especially the strengths of policy, that means you have said that there is weakness. So the weakness that should be strength. So for me, I can suggest 3 weakness points. The first one is lack of policy, or for example, the policy already suggested land use policy we don't have as a major bottleneck for us, and lack of ownership, who implement the kind of restoration, the Ministry of Agriculture or the former FCC or water resource or other entities. So who implement should be answered. The third is lack of institutional arrangement, as Dr. Lefer said, who is responsible body for this kind of activity should be answered. So these 3 things are answered. The first question will be answered. When I come to the second question, as Mr. Abu said, do we have best practice for land restoration? Are we still implementing the 40 years knowledge, like the 1970s, the 1980s practice? We are still practicing. So if there are some knowledge or some agreed land restoration techniques or something, we have to scale. Otherwise, we have to do. I am from the research wing, so I recommend that this kind of research should be done. Then should be summarized and should be disseminated to the user. So research finding is necessary for us, and we have to do a comprehensive literature review to see the history of the best practices. Find the best practice for literature, we can do it, and we can scale it up. If we have traditional best practice, we can do it and we can disseminate to that. So we have to reshape it from the documents and from the local communities, and we can improve such practice by taking from the different parts.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the best question is, do we have really agreed upon best practice? It matters. Maybe anything, Dr. Adafris, would you like to say here? So really, actually, we have these, and this is agreed upon across the sectors and as a national level.
Yeah, I mean, Babu, for me, for instance, if I wanted to start, from very specific forestry intervention area, for instance, nursery management. I mean, in Ethiopia, almost all nurseries are very traditional. They are not only very traditional, they produce very poor quality seedlings. And that means that, we are opted to have, low survival when we take that seedlings to the field. So for me, for instance, is one of the best practice is to innovate our nursery management system. For instance, at FSTU, what we did is that we decided to establish, to begin with establishing innovative or model nurseries, which will serve, later on as a learning point, for instance. One of the best practices that we wanted to promote, for instance, for lowland area is water collection. In Redua, for instance, if you look at our model nursery, you water the seedlings and then they recapture the water after it waters the seedlings, and then that water is recycled. Now I can call this as the best practices for dryland areas where there is shortage of water. Another best practices is, to start nursery management a little bit earlier so that the seedlings will achieve or attain, a good size before the planting season. And in Amara region, it's unfortunate that in Tigray region, now I don't know, but we identified also, the bulk planting of tree seedlings during a small rainy season, for instance. Well, this never been, in the practice of forestry in Ethiopia. What they did is that in April, there is a short rainy season, they plant seedlings, and then they will assist the seedlings to pass, this May drought. May is very, very dry. Then by the time the main rainy season comes, the seedlings are already, started to anchor. And then this has really multiplied, improved survival in the field very much. And I can consider, this type of things as a best practice. We can list, many of them. For restoration, okay, our restoration is very traditional one, but if you look at IUCN's methodology, which is called ROM, they prepared a number of, tools through which we can innovate our restoration intervention. And we are also trying to adopt that in Ethiopia. So that, those sort of things can be listed as best practices, but where the problem lies, where Ato Babu said, do we really document that? Daniel, you remember that IFRI started to document best practices. I think you produced this volume 2 now, but these are mainly based actually on the research findings from the research system, but they need to be expanded. Otherwise, they produced the second volume where they tried, to put the best practices or the knowledge or the information that they have got by doing research. Knowledge management is really a very critical. We are also trying to have it now, and this needs to be put in this document we are discussing. Just to reflect, not to answer your question, I have taken the point as an important recommendation, but just to reflect on that one. Sorry, so please.
Okay, thank you very much. I think Dr. Devries, you as a researcher and expert, you and Dr. Daniel, you may understand things, and you have already produced the volumes, but unfortunately, many of the participants are not aware of that fact. That is why, is there any agreed upon practice? As I said, I think the question is best, we have to communicate to the broader community as a whole, maybe by using different media system. In the near future, I think we will capture these things. Okay, this is, I think we have very limited time, and then we have to move to the fourth question. How to enhance the implementation of National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan to halt biodiversity loss and ecosystem degradation. I think in my presentation, I have shown to you the fact that in 2002, the leaders of the globe, they pledged to halt it. And they came up until 2010. And then they observed the finding was with vain, no effort was made in order to halt this. And then in 2011 to 2020, up until 2020, they designed another national strategy, biodiversity strategy and action plan. And as I have shown to you, this is a global finding, only 23% as a global average best that was made, but the rest 77% was poorly made. Ethiopia, comparatively, about 56%, it was best done.
still we have gaps. Let it be in Ethiopia or on the global level. Commitment is a gap that we analyze, and organization, institutional organization. In some cases, the fund is split, even if at the UN level, for instance, CVD through UNEP. And then also, even if you see in a national strategy, the targets were not clearly understood by the parties. And then indicators were not clear. As a goal by itself was not clear. That was the problem. In case of Ethiopia, for instance, so Ethiopian Biodiversity Institute was organizer coordinator for the system, and the Ministry of then, the Ministry of Environment, Forest, Climate Change was also a chair, including the parliamentary bodies were there also. But even if there were 10 different ministries directly involving, for instance, the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Agriculture, and the EUCA, the Ethiopian Wildlife, and so on, and so many they were. So involvement was low in many cases, and at the same time, there are certain focal points at each sector. So once you assign the focal point, that focal point was expected to work throughout the 5 or 6 years time. So the ministry assigns one focal point. He will be just leaving the sector, and then replaced by somebody. Another new will come, and within that limited time, you may face about 3 or 4 focal points. So the question is how to follow up is also another problem. And the case, no enforcing conditions are at that moment. So bearing all this, the problems and the challenge that we face as a global or as a national level in your mind, so the question is how to implement national biodiversity strategy and action plan. Really, the strategies were best strategies. The strategies at a global level, best. But the parties will differ in the way, in the activity that they took and the implementation capacity. With this, probably, that is why maybe many of you are not aware of this, the National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan. Already it's a big book produced, and then online you can find the 2015 production. So with this, probably I may give about 2 or 3 speakers to say any suggestion on this, if I am clear. Understood by you, I mean. So anyway.
Mr. Chair, sorry, why speak about a certain point in this one? So we have to do this.
So on scaling up.
Yes.
You are to add.
I want to take 1 minute.
Okay.
So on the scaling up aspect, I mean.
But by the way, sorry, doctor. The second and the third are responded together. We agreed. And then directly after your response, I will move to the fourth one. Thank you. Go ahead.
So what I want to say here is for scaling up best practices is not certain practices. So we need to think about how we can effectively and responsibly scale up initiatives to a broader, to a national or global. So one way to do that is creating innovative incentive mechanisms. So where are we going to get those finances, and how are we going to manage those finances, and who is going to be involved in the value chain of the financing? So incentive mechanisms are very crucial components of scaling up this practice. The second point is engagement of private sector actors. I think this has been a huge challenge in the forestry or maybe the private government sector of our country. So how are we going to engage the private sector in scaling up best practices. I believe private sector actors are key, or maybe I would say they are the most essential factor or elements of scaling up projects to in a broader way. So I think it would be good if we give due consideration to the importance of private sector actors when we think about scaling up best practices. So now we can go to the course.
Okay, Dr.
So
Thank you very much.
Yeah, just a minute. But on the fourth one, again, I didn't see any on the third one. I didn't see a comment from you. I mean, on the responsibility of the international community. Did we really not include a recommendation for the international community? For instance, Ethiopia pledged restoring 22 million hectares of degraded land, which will also have global significance. And then this really needs the support of the global community, without which we can realize this. Ethiopia has been sending, water to all the neighboring Horn of African countries: Sudan, Somalia, Eritrea, Djibouti. I mean, shouldn't these countries really, okay, we need to do our restoration ourselves, but shouldn't also these lowland countries, I mean, downstream countries also really cooperate with upstream countries in terms of restoring landscape, so that the rain will be normal and enough water will flow to this country? Should the global community not, supporting Ethiopia in terms of mobilizing resource, technology, so on, and with a minimum anything on
Mind you, we are left with only 30 minutes. Okay, maybe Ababu is going to respond.
I think this issue always comes on the top of the national community or the development was considered the majority of the climate change impact, the issues about the developed countries, as they are not taking their community. And we need to reiterate again, in the thought that they should be the commitment and the right. This is particularly Egyptian. It has put the enabling environment for the international community to the resource for the restoration of general potentiality and implementation, which are the facility. But only a couple of countries, like always, them are a couple of them are contributing. There are a lot of rooms where many of these countries need to contribute their resources for the implementation. Services in broad terms or restoration. For example, the other one is now in cooperation with the different development. Now we are about the establishment of mega and operational framework for the restoration of the landscape and the aspect. The full opportunity, for example, like if the council of ministers has this one, we are now on the process of developing operational framework. Oh, this is an enabling environment for the international community and support the impact. So we can put on our recommendation immediately.
Okay, thank you very much. That's enough. So we shall, we are left with nearly 25 minutes. So please, I call upon the speakers on strengthening or supporting the implementation of this biodiversity strategy and action plan. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 maximum. So you will have about maximum of 2 minutes. Yeah, you're up. Okay, please, number 1 here. Thank you. 5 speakers.
Number 4 was not just implementation. It is important to consider the role of the different. We need to mostly we are missing when we are working on conservation, we are missing the other sectors. So it is important to bring the role of the other sectors. Including agriculture and other social sectors working on social governance. And we are also missing the population dynamics. So it is also important to consider how we can address the population issues while we are thinking about conservation. So by doing this, we can optimize the results of the implementation of the data. And for this, it is important. I don't know how we will work so far after the development of this, but it is important to different actors with regard to implementing rules. What should be the role of the different actors and how they can support the action. Mostly what we conduct problem analysis to identify the problems, but we don't bring it to solution. So it is important to see that way cooperation is there.
Okay, thank you very much. Number 2. Yeah, number 2 here.
Thank you very much for having the presentation. We are indicators so we have that we have to synchronize this sectoral information findings. Very important. We take a report plans as well as APC documents. So we do enhance the implementation of the stuff. We have to do some synchronization of those indicators. So regarding the global community issues, how do we combine
Synchronization with?
with the 10-year development plan? There are indicators. There are also sectoral prevention indicators and ABC. So we are going to synchronize the APB stuff indicators with those major developments of the country. Regarding the global community issues, regarding the downstream upstream issues, service programs. Pace is more global scale, but now if we are taking over the global issues or the transforming issues, global combination of the issue of production is accelerating the more challenges.
Thank you very much. Number 3, Zeno. Okay, okay, number 3.
Regarding ecosystem degradation, law and also see the strategy documents. In my opinion, that is policy orders important key. If we would be able to move on ecosystem degradation through land use policies, for example, which area is suitable for cropping, which area is suitable for afforestation, forestry, which area is suitable for wildlife development, utilization of tourism, and so on. We will be able, in my opinion, to hold much of the biodiversity loss that comes to ecosystem degradation. But there is also another cause of biodiversity loss. As human population increases, basically, producers would need to increase their productivity. and they normally move to commercial cropping or commercial livestock production. And by doing so, they give back the indigenous breeds or varieties, and they go for the improved breeds or varieties, and that way huge biodiversity loss occurs. So if we would be able to work with local communities, with family partners, small farmers, I think that would be an opportunity to enhance protection of biodiversity loss. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think back, yeah.
Ecotourism can be taken as a market kind of biodiversity conservation. Overall, the communities who are really living around conservation areas in relation to biodiversity, we need to really maximize community benefits in that particular area. While the project is kind of purpose of development, where I say purpose of development, we may have forests. Those communities who are really around those protected forests, national parks, assets, need to have a kind of development itself. We have seen a very good initiative whereby the purpose of development contributed for conservation in survey. So the purpose of development can focus. So biodiversity potential sites should really support with purpose of development.
Thank you very much. I think the first one, yes, thank you.
I don't understand why you speak so that we need to unpack it and consider it with regards to the government. For example, we have virus and cascade, whether in according to the population, the basic way to control virus so what we at the national at the local level. For that, action plan by itself is now outside
May I respond, please? Thank you very much. Because you haven't accustomed to come across with what the strategy it was. Local community says the Warada, the zona, the ministerial level, every indicator, what activity they are expected is a full by itself. Therefore sufficient, because many of you may not understand that. So it was full. The question is what I said, no commitment at all. People are not responding, one. And internationally, the fund has to be, or the resource has to be mobilized. No mobility as such, things like that. And then also change in the focal points is also another question. And these were the problem that we have faced. Let alone this, even if they do have their own activities, given activities on the book, they understand what it is. but they didn't act, and at the same time, they do not report back to the coordinator. This was the problem that we faced. And another question is that Ethiopia performed above the global average. Global average is 23%, best work done. But the Ethiopians is 56. This is really, it is the best. As the CVD focal point, I understand that also. Also, I have been working as a bureau member for the COP bureau member of the CVD. With this regard, Ethiopia, to some extent, worked or have done better. So with that, as you indicated, let alone the global, I mean, the national level itself, we have to comment. Thank you. Maybe with this understanding, you may comment anything if you are. Okay, thank you.
Sure. The problem is with the question. The question should be supplemented with the constraints that this action plan has faced. So now it's already answered. The constraints are mentioned now. So we can comment on it.
Yeah. Sorry, doctor. In my presentation, about 5 or 6 constraints I have indicated. And my intention is that bearing all this in your mind, you respond. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we increase or we enhance or improve the commitment of the people by providing some or supporting by other relatives or something. Because if they lose some interest, you have to bring those interests and it should be supported by providing incentive. Second thing is limitation of resource mobility. We have to work.
Say, Doc, that is I enjoyed your response. For instance, it is a Ministry of Agriculture or it is a Ministry of Education. So how to provide incentive for them? Because they have to work upon. They do have their own activity given to implement as a national level the biodiversity strategy and action plan. So that are maybe anything that you may suggest here. It is not at the farmers or the peasant level, even if at the ministry or the sectoral level is a question that. Let me show you, for instance, I don't know any people from the Ministry of Education. So experts went to the Ministry of Education from my institute. And then what they say is that, so the authorized guy, he said, no, we don't want to work with you. And please be out of my office. Things like that. So how to improve is the question.
You have to give my answer would be you have to give this responsibility to work by this person. So when you give some job or action, you have to give them with the responsibility. So they will be asked by somebody. So that is my answer. I thought it was the people's the local. Second, with the resource mobility, you have to find or we have to search for fund. Then this action plan going to be implemented. So I support that, or I comment that fund raising mobility or searching for fund is the answer to this.
Thank you. I mean, I wanted to really raise a critics to myself. I mean, like, for instance, we have this EBI, Ministry of Agriculture, you know, there are many institutions. I mean, okay, sometimes we develop a national strategy which needs to be implemented by different organizations. But is the implementation of this strategy the main job of the EBI itself? Why EBI is expecting, you know, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Water, or somewhere else to implement the strategy. EBI cannot do it, you know, the whole, but I am expecting that the Ministry of Water needs the majority of the work things, I mean, the water things, and the Ministry of Agriculture, the majority of the agriculture things. And if this is biodiversity conservation, is that not the responsibility of EBI itself, you know, to do more than 90% of the responsibilities? I mean, I may be wrong, but I feel like that. And it is, you know, this type of determination that save, you know, the loss of some of the activities that we distribute to different institutions. For instance, if as a forestry institution, if I expect other institution to do forestry activities for me, is that going to work? Okay, they can do. For instance, Ministry of Agriculture may engage in agroforestry, or maybe Ministry of Water do also watershed management. You know, they might use, you know, tree planting, and the NGOs also engage in tree planting, restoration, conservation. But is that not the role of the forestry institution to do the majority of the activities in terms of implementing its strategy? I mean, maybe if this is going to be a discussion idea.
Okay, thank you. At the national level, about 10 ministries signed the agreement by the way. And then who is coordinating at the end of the day? I don't know any people from the Plan and Development Ministry. So Plan and Development Ministry was evaluating whether these guys have mainstreamed biodiversity issues into their sector or not. One of our colleagues says the 10 years plan. So it was already incorporated into their plan. That is why they're on duty. Simply, the Ethiopian Biodiversity Institute was meant for the coordination purpose. That was the case. So, okay, my colleague suggested to going to the next, the fifth one. I think.
What people's, you know, following us from other place.
Yes.
So I mean, yeah, to go on unmute. Yeah, I can say this, that if there are some people who have been following us online, please, you can either send your questions through chat. If not, also, you can also directly surface your questions. We can listen.
Yeah. Any question from online? I mean, response. I think, yeah, I think there is no. So let us move to the next question. What diverse approach do we have to fund biodiversity conservation? Let me say a few things. Maybe Article 20 of the CBD says that for the better conservation of biodiversity, so the fund or resource will be mobilized from the developed countries to the developing country. This is the agreement by CBD. So as such, we can't see such a resource movement as it has been expected. With this, the question is, you see how to fund the biodiversity conservation is a question. Not to describe more, I think this is enough. So directly, the biodiversity conservation is related with the economic development also, because our people directly dependent upon the biodiversity itself, the agriculture and other. So unless otherwise we improve the economic development of the local people, I think conservation may not be effective. So what other options can we have to conserve biodiversity?
This is about fund, yeah? I mean, should we a little bit modify the questions? For instance, how can we better mobilize resource? This could be fund or technology or other input to, conserve biodiversity. Would that question a little bit more give sense, or we keep this one? What diverse approach do we have to fund biodiversity conservation?
Okay, shall we move to the other if you couldn't understand the question? La ቢዘውትን ጥበቃ ለማድረግ በቂ ገንዘብ አለመኖሩ አንዱ ችግራችን ይሄ ነው። ኢኮኖሚያችን የተመሰረተው ያው በነባሩ ቢዘውት ህይወት ነው። እንበልና ለምሳሌ ደን አለን አይደል? ስለዚህ ደኑ እንዳይጠፋ ለመከላከል ብንፈልግ ደንና ደን ውስጥ ያለው የህብረተሰቡ ኑሮ መሻሻል አለበት ማለት ያንን ስናሻሽል ኦሬዲ ያ ቢዘውት እንዲጠበቅ የማድረግ ነገሮች አሉ። ቅድም እኔ እንደምሳሌ አዘ ቤስት ፕራክቲስ ያሳየሁትም ነገር አለ። የምትሉት ነገር ካለ ከሌለ ተውት። ሌላ እንቀጥል። It was for the sake of explaining more. Already I said it. Yeah.
I think we can operationalize that. That can also be some sort of fund or resource to provide conservation. For example, our nations, figures concerning the highland biodiversity source of the area has a huge impact on downstreams. So the downstream countries obliged to pay for this conservation. So payment for ecosystem services is one of the modalities for not only providers, we are looking at service and we want we are professionalizing payment for ecosystem services. And the other one is corporate social responsibilities of the private sector, for example, are also if we want that some sort of legal framework, that is some sort of very money, huge resource water, and imagine those resource water because the special cover that particular area because the lakes, because the rivers, business, but as a being of the conservation